Hi guys, I'm Lisa and I'm back with another video. Today I thought I wanted to sort of give you an idea of the differences between urban fantasy and paranormal romances. Because as you know, I love urban fantasy, I read a ton of it and also enjoy paranormal romance, but I don't enjoy it as much as urban fantasy. And I think often that a lot of people don't know the differences, so they sort of mix the genres up, or they just call it whatever they think it is, because yeah, it is kind of difficult to sometimes categorize a genre, especially considering that most of these urban fantasies, they are paranormal books and they are often also romances, so why are they not paranormal romances? And anyway, I thought I'd just bring some light to these two genres and tell you the differences so that you can sort of find a way to sort of know the differences as well, and so you can pick out the books that you want to read. And the first point, which I think is the most important way to sort of distinguish the two genres, is that there's a different hero and heroine in each and every single book when it comes to paranormal romances. Whereas in urban fantasy we follow the same protagonist through all of the books. In paranormal romance we shift point of views between the female, so the hero, and the heroine mostly, so we get both of their point of views. In urban fantasy we generally stick to the same point of view through all of the books. It's female point of views, but there are also urban fantasy series that's centered from a guy's perspective, like Dresden Files for instance. In paranormal romance, romance is primary to plot, whereas in urban fantasy the romance is secondary, if there is any at all, to the plot. But in paranormal romance, the hero and heroine usually get their happily ever after this book is finished, whereas in urban fantasy there's no particular happy ending by the end of a book. You sort of have to see if this turns out to be a happy ending when it comes to the last book of the series. So this relationship sort of spans over multiple books. In paranormal romance, sex scenes are very graphic and they're more frequent than they are in urban fantasy. In urban fantasy, a lot more about sexual tension than it is about the sexual act. And if there are any sex in it, it's pretty brief. So these are the biggest differences in the two genres. Now I'm gonna go recommend some series that are in each of these genres that I have read and I have enjoyed as well. I'll be starting with the paranormal romance series because I feel like this is my least favorite of the genre. So I have a couple of series that I have really enjoyed so far. And the first one of those is the Black Dagger Brotherhood, which is a vampire sort of paranormal romance story where it follows new members of the Black Dagger Brotherhood with each and every book. And so this has a new protagonist with every book, and then it also has a subplot. The reason I actually enjoy this book is because it has another plot as well beside the romance. I know that romance is probably the primary aspect of this series, but there's also always a big conflict of this book, and they are exploring that in a really well way as well. So yeah, definitely a series that I've enjoyed so far. I've so far read book 1, 2 and 3, and then I was halfway through book 4, but I stopped and now I haven't picked it up again. But I want to go back and reread that book because it wasn't because I wasn't enjoying it. I was just in a mood where I had so many books that I needed to read at a time, and then I had to put one down, and then the usual happens and I don't pick it up again. So I have to get back to this book. And another paranormal romance series that I have read, I've actually read the 2 books that are out in this series, is the Moonbound Clan Vampires by Larissa Ioni. This follows vampires as well, and this is a new couple as well with each book. And again, I like Larissa Ioni's writing because she also adds another layer of another subplot that's going, and it's a lot deeper, and I like the romances in this book. There's also her Demonica series, which I read the first 2 books of, and I've also somewhat enjoyed it. I don't think that as good as the Moonbound Clan Vampire books so far, but I've heard that this is her better series, so I'm intrigued to see where this is gonna go. Then I've also started in on The Immortals After Dark by Kresley Cole, where I've read the first 2 books, and I've enjoyed that as well. Those 2 books were interesting, and they were sort of exploring both wolf and vampires, but they were also focusing on Valkyries, which are some mythology aspects of the story, and I enjoyed that. But I have not read on in that series, so yeah, but it's very popular in the paranormal romance genre. These are sort of the 3 paranormal romances that I've read something of that I enjoyed, and so I have a lot more urban fantasy series to talk about, but I'm only gonna pick out a few. I have 5 or 6 urban fantasy series that I really love, and I know that I'll be finishing pretty soon. The first one is going to be the Elemental Assassins series by Jennifer Eastep, which I've read 6 books of, and I'm really enjoying it. I like Jen as a character, and I like the romance in it, and I like the side characters. I think some of them are really understanding, and then we have some of them that needs to up their game in that area. I like that's quite a lot of angst in it, in a good way, not overly done, but understandable considering the things that the characters have gone through. And yeah, I really enjoyed this series so far. And then we have the Hollow series, which is a very action-packed, very all over the place urban fantasy series that follows a witch and her sort of private detective sort of thing when she's trying to help stopping paranormal things in the Cincinnati night times, and she's sort of been hunted down by demons all the time, and having to work around that is not always easy. And I love a lot of the side characters as well. I like Rachel as a character, but the side characters are probably, some of the side characters are probably my favorite. There's Jinx and Crispin and Trenton Calamax. Those 3 characters are super interesting to follow, and they have a lot of depth to them, and yeah, so many things are happening in this series that you don't always expect, and it's sort of, yeah, you can't tell when you start the book where this is gonna end, because so many things happen, and it's just really, really good. I could suggest that this would be a good urban fantasy series to start out with, because I don't feel like it's super romance heavy, and it's not very, since it's adult urban fantasy, there's not a lot of sex scenes in it. Romance is often not the primary thing about these urban fantasy series, but there is some romance in it, but it's not heavily all over this series. And then we have the Dresden Files series, which you know I love this. I've been reading a lot of books from that series while I've been doing these videos as well, and I just love this series that has a lot of great side characters like Murphy, who is like my favorite in the series, and I also have come to really like Harry as a character. He was a little hard to really love in the beginning, but I feel like where he's gone to now is what he's developed to be now is completely amazing. And there's so many, I have so many feels about this series now, especially after book 12, because that almost broke me, because there's so many things happening in this one. I did not expect this book to up book 8, which was Proven Guilty. I thought that was going to be the masterwork in this series, but Changes just upped its game, and so many things happened, and I cannot wait to see where this is gonna go with the next 3 books. I love this series, and you should definitely check out the audios if you do want to read this series. But I will say that I've heard the first couple of books were not really well done, because they were the first books that James Marsters had ever narrated. But I didn't start listening to the audios until book 4, because I ran out of the books from the library, so I started listening to it on audio back then. Then we have the other series. I currently only have 2 books, but I have written in red. It's going to be here in a couple of days. It's on its way here, but it's not here right now, so I have Murder of Crows to show you. I mean, I love this series so much. I love this burning romance in it. I love the character development. I love the world building. I love the writing style. It's a pretty slow moving urban fantasy compared to the other series I've talked about. If a slow paced urban fantasy is not your thing, I'm not sure if you're gonna enjoy it, but this is very descriptive, and it has a very slow pace. You're sort of seeing each and every single day after Meg arrives in this courtyard, and her development throughout each and every day. So it's pretty simple, but that's because in the beginning she is such a simple character. She's such an innocent character because she doesn't know a lot of things because she's been kept in captivity for so long, and just the way you're following her, how she's progressing through all of the things. I just loved every single minute of reading these books, and I cannot wait to see where all of these characters go. And yeah, this is also an urban fantasy series you should check out if you don't think that romance is something you're completely into, because the romance is very minor, especially in the first book, and it's also pretty minor in the second book. Just not the main part about this. This is just mostly about Meg discovering new things and just her abilities as a character as well. I love this series so much. Last and finally, I have, which is probably my favorite series, and the only reason I don't have any of the books in physical form is because I think the covers are terrible, but my favorite urban fantasy series ever so far is Mercy Thompson. I love her as a character, I love Adam as a character, they are my favorite OTP. I love every single book. I really enjoyed every single book except maybe the first one. I think this first one was lacking a lot of things, but it definitely progressed into something completely amazing from book 2 and until where I am now, which is book 5, and I'm definitely going to check out more books from that series in this year. And yeah, I just thoroughly love Mercy Thompson and the whole gang. I love the side characters of Kyle and Warren. I love Stefan, who is a vampire that's also showing up, and I also really like C, who's a fae character, and then I love Adam's daughter. I just absolutely adore this series so much, and I think everyone should check it out if they want to check out urban fantasy series at all. I like Mercy Thompson as a character because she might be a heroine and she's a really strong character, but she doesn't just do things that is completely ridiculous on her own. It's not like she goes around doing things in secrecy. She's always have someone with her. If there's something dangerous going to happen, it's not like she goes out on her own like so many other characters do in YA fantasy, which sometimes, well, pretty often annoy me, because yes, she's a strong character, but she can't defeat all the troubles in the world on her own. She can't, and I love that. And I love that there are some things that happened in book 3 that was a really emotional, pretty big deal that happened by the end of that book, and she's still dealing with the repercussions of that, sort of getting over things that happened there, and I like that it's naturally flowing. I just really like that. Then I want to mention a series that is very often really hard to place in these two genres, because they're often placed as both genres, because yeah. And that is the Night Hunters series, and that is because I think the main reason for that being often placed in paranormal romance category is because it has romance as one of the main plots of this series. It's heavily built on romance, and there's a lot of graphic sex scenes in it, and that's not usual for urban fantasy a lot. But the reason I still categorize this as urban fantasy is because the main protagonist, Kat, is the same person we follow from book 1 to book 7 consistently. It's always her point of view, it's always her we're following. We never switch point of views to Bones, and we never switch to other characters. There is side series in this world. There's this series called The Night Hunters World, I think, where there are 2 books, and those I'll consider paranormal romance because they follow 2 different characters, 2 different couples, and they shift point of views between the female and the male, I believe. Or maybe they don't, and they just change couples. And then we have The Night Prince, which centers around one of the side characters from the Night Hunters series. And it's very important, if you want to read all of these series, that you read them in publication order, because otherwise you'll be spoiled about things that happens in the series further on. So very important if you don't want to be spoiled about things, at least. So this was all I had to say about these 2 genres today, and I tried to come up with some suggestions about series about this as well, that you can check out, and let me know in the comments down below if you have checked out these genres and what did you think of the books that you checked out. Have you read any of the books from the series I've talked about today? And also let me know if you're interested in reading any of these series, because and if you have some questions about the series that I have not explored, then please write that in the comments down below as well, and I'll help answering those questions as best as possible without spoiling it too much. And yeah, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video, hopefully very soon. Goodbye!